Step by Step is the 39th and penultimate episode of the first season of Postcards from Buster, and the first thing I want to say about this is that it's really inspirational. This is the second episode that has actually cost me money. A few episodes back, quite a few episodes back actually, there was focus on folk music, and I ended up buying a harmonica, and I'm now actually self-teaching the harmonica. And in this episode, there's a lot of dancing in it. And I've done a couple of beginner tap lessons online, but I needed to pay for the next block session of videos. And I've been putting it off. And after watching this episode, I just went, this has inspired me. I'm going to go ahead with it. So the tap shoes are going back on my feet thanks to this episode. It's not actually tap dancing in this, but the point is I found it to be a very infectious kind of energy, and that's definitely a sign that the episode is done very well. Step by Step actually takes place in Hartford, Connecticut, and what's a little interesting about this is that it's focusing on Puerto Rican dance, and the overarching narrative is really interesting, which I'll go into detail about in a moment. But the reason it's interesting that it's Puerto Rican is that in the previous episode, they were in Puerto Rico. So I did kind of think, couldn't they have kind of just extended the stay in Puerto Rico and focused a bit more on the culture? But it was nice to see bits of Connecticut. We didn't actually get to see that much of it, to be perfectly honest. Most of this was about dancing and a little bit about hearing aids, which sounds boring, but actually I found it to be really moving and really well done. The episode actually starts off with Sue Ellen and Francine is visiting her neighbour, and she's planning a 75th, I think, birthday party for her. And while there, her neighbour talks about fun memories of Puerto Rican dancing, and Francine decides that that's the perfect theme. So she asks Buster to film some Puerto Rican dancing, as he's going to Hartford, Connecticut, where there is a Puerto Rican community. And that all ties together really nicely, but we also have this hearing aid aspect. And Francine's neighbour has been given a hearing aid, but she refuses to wear it because she thinks it'll slow her down, she'll come across as an old granny type, and she doesn't want to do it. And that really ties in with Buster's journey as well, and everything just feels like it's meant to fit together so nicely. So the dancing, first of all, Buster meets a girl called Katarina, and she introduces Buster to, I think, 3 main dances. Some of them with salsa is a lot more modern, which I didn't know, and some more traditional dances such as bomba. And I have to say, I wanted to get up and dance with them, and I didn't look into lessons because one crazy new hobby at a time, but I did kind of think this actually looks really fun, and I'm not coordinated, but I feel like I could at least give this a good go, and maybe one day I will. And I honestly felt like, well, as I said, I ended up going and paying for my next block session of online tap lessons. So if it encourages anybody to do any kind of dancing, that's great. But as I said, maybe if I hadn't already been beginning tap, I might have actually looked into salsa. It looks really good. Definitely does a really good job of showing what it's like, showing the variety, obviously with the music as well. It's really great to listen to. It cuts back to Francine and Sue Ellen a couple of times, and we see Francine trying to get the rhythm of the music, and Sue Ellen's trying to dance while wearing, oh, I didn't write down the name of it, but it's a kind of headscarf that they wear, and Sue Ellen was struggling to kind of dance with that on her head, and we learn a lot about the dress and the attire they wear, so it's very educational, really informative, and obviously really inspiring. But then we have the hearing aspect, and Katarina, I don't know how old she is, it might have been mentioned, but let's say she's around about 8 to 12, somewhere in that age range. Obviously not immediately the age you'd think when you think of hearing aids, but she had difficulty hearing, so she got a hearing aid, and she talks with Buster about how she just gets on with it, and actually it's a good thing to have a hearing aid because she can hear better, and that means you can enjoy things more. And there's this little video package that Buster puts together to send to Francine's neighbour to encourage her to wear hearing aids, and I thought it was really great. And I feel like that brief video should be shown to anybody who needs a hearing aid, who's apprehensive about wearing it, because it made it seem so, I don't want to use the word normal because that's not always the best word, but it does. It's like, oh, you got a hearing aid? Okay then, no big deal. And I think that was a really great attitude to have. And not only is it not a big deal, but it's a good thing. If you've got a hearing problem, why wouldn't you want to wear a hearing aid and make things clearer? Well, as we know with Francine's neighbour, she had various reasons for not wanting to, but as Katarina shows, the good outweighs the bad. Beautifully done episode. Really, one that I really thoroughly enjoyed. Yeah, I would have liked to have seen more of Hartford, Connecticut itself, but because the dancing was so infectious and engaging and educational, and then we had quite a lot about the hearing aid. Quite a lot of time was spent on the hearing aid, actually, but I found it to be so moving as well that I didn't mind. I didn't mind that at all. Step by step, for the penultimate episode of the first season, definitely pretty great.